animals and plants may have expressed that free will of the universe as it manifested in their form. In humans, we are doing the same because we are born from the dust of the universe and evolve in our consciousness to be as we are. But as I mentioned about the breathing exercise, this is Anapana meditation on breathing. It's one of those YouTube videos. I use the term to express the meaning of that exercise as finding the point of consciousness and unconsciousness. What I mean by that is that the human consciousness has certain element, and if I use the term mind, mind has its own constraint, and we feel that we use a mind as free will. But this free will that we think we have may not exist because the mind has limitation. It's not purely expressing the way of nature because of the habitual patterns and the constraint we have in the mind, and the use of the word and the thinking make it more confined in certain category of our existence or our being, so that the whole view of the mind and what we play in the mind may not reflect the will of the universe, so to speak. And the will of the universe is free will because it's formless. It's just the law of nature that brought us to this world and evolved as much as the plant and animals. We did go through and then start to have this brain and the mind to play with as a part of this evolution of the consciousness. Well, that sounds too philosophical. Let's get to the point let's use the word from Zen, because Zen doesn't use too many words and capture the essence of it. And it could be very troublesome and could be misinterpreted, but still there's a way that we may be able to capture the point if we are open to that kind of approach, so that we can be at the end liberated. Liberated again is representing the free will of the universe. And as I mentioned in my videos, there's a space that we feel comfortable as we are. I think there's a name of the video, like find home or be comfortable as we are. We really are. That represents not the space in the mind, but more connected to the root of who we are. So in Zen expression, the root of who we are is to meet before fathers and mothers were born, the original self. That's the state that you can connect to the will of the universe. So that's the moment of enlightenment, awakening, that the world we have is not the whole world of it, because the world we have may be only existing in our mind as a constraint, so that we don't know something is missing by using the mind and the thinking. So I may have had the video about stop thinking, no thinking, no self, empty self, calm and quiet mind. All the videos along with those titles are pointing the state of being, free being, liberated. So accustomed in the mind and the use of the word, and especially like I mentioned about my going through the night because I had some concern in my mind about the work, it popped up, what could be the future? And you hit the wall because mind has the constraint and limitation to solve by itself because it's just a part of us, not the whole of us. So if we look at the construct, which I may have shared in a different video, by using the word like two universes as an example, there's a mind universe that you think may be the whole, but there's other universe. And I used to explain that in one of the other video, again, about the bird in the cage. Actually, this was one of my slides that I often used as my management consulting, that after you give a lecture and one person come to me, Professor Suzaki, I understand your story, but I feel like a bird in a cage. Because of your story and the presentation, I feel that there's the door open, but I feel like I'm a bird in the cage. I don't know if I should go out or can I go out of the opening or what to do. So Professor Suzaki tell me what I should do. So in that case that I was giving presentation of the self-management and the mini company, glasswall management, all these ideas to be liberated from the constraint of the mind and the structure of the management in the organization, but us to have the free-spirited approach, so to speak, to exploring like a bird, not in the cage. The cage may exist only in our mind, but you can be free from that. So that's the essence of the message. So it applies to not just the management in the organization, but also in our individual being. So the idea like know thyself, Socrates, or even before that, I think that was Delphi temple, it was inscribed, is to know who we are. And Yuval Harari talks about that in relation to AI, that AI may make our decisions much more easily so that our role may be to explore who we are and how we exist and what experience is. Because that's the area that we haven't quite experienced or explored because we are busy making decisions and using the word and the mind. But if the AI is taking over most of those jobs, then we should liberate ourselves. And for that, we can explore in a much more high value added, if that's the term, of not just doing the minuscule job and repetitive job, the robot doing the job so that you can free yourself to do the artwork or painting or whatever and get close to nature, explore the experience of who we are for liberation. I don't know if he said that, but I think that's the element, so that the AI and the technology may give us the threat of our being, reason of our being, but that may give us the pain as much as the pain that I was going through last night a little bit, but come out of it by experiencing and finding the passage. So that's the nature of what we may be and we can be, and even relating to my work as a management consultant, but also relating to Zen, the spirit of Zen and the liberation, be liberated. May we all be happy, as expressed by what the nature may brought us here, to know what that free will is. So that's the process that we can go through by finding the suffering, and therefore we reach out to the next level. So the AI is giving suffering, that what is the reason of our being, then that may lead us to lead in that direction to be liberated, knowing the free will of the universe, knowing the law of nature, and align ourselves so that we are not consuming and suffering for the useless stuff, but be more open to it for the future, or for the now, to be connected to the future, which is to be with the law of nature of free will of the universe, so to speak, the liberation. So let's be a little specific, because this has been a little bit of a conceptual discussion, and I want to connect to the experience of going through that night. And let me point few stuff. I already mentioned about Anapana meditation and breathing, and I have posted some videos about the belly breathing using the diaphragm. So this is the physiological issue that connect to our consciousness, so to speak, and that's the way that we are constructed, and all the meditation and all the training and the processes that we may be going through has that element of it. So the exercise, most specifically, was called the Betreko, I think was his name, um, discussing about the importance of breathing, using the belly breathing idea, but more specific in various ways that it explained. So let me get into it, because there's a connection to all what I have talked already about the liberation. Again, the background, I did the Anapana or Vipassana, and that is relating to the connection to the nature's way that may be manifested in our breathing or the sensation we have. And being aware and staying equanimous, meaning that you notice what's going on and stay calm and quiet, then we start to find the opening to be liberated, come up with a wisdom. That's the idea of the Sila Samadhi Panya I mentioned elsewhere, of doing the right conduct, right technique, and be open and calm and quiet mind. It's Samadhi. Then you come up with Panya or Samadhi, the basics of Buddha's teaching. But any other religion may have the similar context of having a calm and quiet mind beyond our thinking mind. So, in this betrayal breathing technique, he was talking about only use nostril breathing, not through the mouth, number one, if I can capture the essence of it. And not the rapid breathing, but calm and quiet breathing. You may sense the temperature of the air coming in is cold. When you let go, breathe out, the temperature goes up. You may feel the sensation on the right nostril or left nostril. You get more attuned to that. Well, that may not have been discussed in the Betreko, but Anapana, I explained that. And Betreko may not talk about the consciousness and unconsciousness, but if I may explain what he is doing in teaching that method, he may do something like that. That when you breathe, sometimes you can stop for a while. When you breathe in, breathe out, and stop. And then breathe again, in, out, in, out, stop, in, out, in, out, stop. As you may have, I don't know, but you may have stopped your thinking as well. When it happens, this is connected to anapana. I like to explain this way that we have a consciousness or mind consciousness in this case that may keep us busy when facing the problem. But when you do this meditation, or in this case, Petraeus training, and you stop breathing and start again, your attention goes to the specific sensation happening in your body, physiology, that open up the room, that occupied mind start to find something different, new dimension, or I call it a different universe. It may sound weird when I say it this way, but if your mind is too busy and occupied and go through the suffering, that there's no room because the whole world is like a suffering. You may feel like it. It looks like it. You're captured and trapped. That's the experience of being in trouble in your mind, the suffering. So if you don't want to carry that to the next day, that's the Bible saying, don't carry your worry to the next day, let the worry to rest by itself. So that by stopping, by way of focusing on the breathing, your attention goes to from the point of suffering to something much bigger, different universe that you may not be aware of before when you are under suffering, because there was no way out. The way out is already there. The door of the cage is open for the bird to fly out, but the bird thinks the cage is too big and there may be an opening, but he doesn't see it. So he just stayed there and just stay there, and try to struggle. Actually, that's my experience of meditation and called Banga, that I was suffering, then figured out a way. And this is connected to Eckhart Tolle's experience, very similar, that he thought when he was suffering, almost committing suicide many times, he said in his mind, I can't stand myself. So there's me and another myself, two identity, and that's the opening that he found, that he thought he was entrapped, but there's something watching yourself suffering. Similarly, in this breathing exercise, you may see a jump in the logic, but it's not the human logic, but nature's law says that if you are occupied and if you follow your breathing and be open to exercise, breathe in, breathe out, calm and quiet, in, out, only through your nose, not too much on the chest, because when the chest is going up and down, that's when you're suffering. But when you do the belly breathing, you have a different element in that structure. My view on that, I mentioned in my YouTube video, is that the belly breathing may have something to do with the will, maybe the will of the universe. energy, the life force is coming out from the belly. In Japan, they talk about the belly as a second brain, the brain at the top of the head, and there's another brain. And from Lao Tzu, from Taoism, talks about breathing through your soul. When I heard this when I was young, I couldn't figure out. But what it means is that there's the root from your soul that energy can filter in, fill in, as if from the belly connecting to have the energy, and that energy spread out. So it's a new opening that we may realize. You may not realize just now, but maybe 20 years, 30 years later, you may, or maybe earlier, the meaning of it, which basically point that the door is open. Air is coming in and out. We just don't know it, but when we notice it, there's a new world opening up, not the confined world of mind, but a different dimension. So Betrayko isn't using any of those words, but he's just technique oriented, just like a Vipassana retreat of 10 days. Just focus on breathing, that's Anapana, then focus on the sensation of the body. There's no construct of the logic as much, but to experiencing it. That's the point of Harari, Yuval Harari. He went through meditation, Vipassana, similar to me. I've done dozens of times. He did usually a 10-day course in my case, but he did even 45-day course, and then recently I heard him saying that he went through Vipassana 60 days. Focus on breathing, focus on body sensation, opening up, and let the mind play its own game, thinking he's playing the free will. In fact, he may not be, because it's not connected to the root of being. But by going through this meditation for 10 days or 45 days, 60 days, depending upon how much you want to do, but you may realize that there's a different universe out there. So basically, to capture the essence of it in the next few minutes so that I finish this, at least to get the point, is that, I mean, there's lots of things I want to talk about, but maybe it's good enough to close this in the next few minutes, because it may be too much. The essence of it is that this exercise of in, out, belly breathing, stopping, or you can make the breathing very subtle, quiet, small amount of air coming in, going out, almost stopping to the point of stopping in and out, but still flowing in, out, using the belly, relaxed, in, out. You find your home. That's my terminology. You find your being, original self. So there's me and there's another self, true self. The mind would fight to go against it, but you let that be, accept whatever is doing, but just focus on breathing in, out. When I did this Vipassana meditation, I noticed my breathing stop because it gets subtle, subtle, subtler, and subtler. And to the point that the breathing stopped when I noticed. In that moment, if you are aware, you may find the sensation spreading out all over, and you feel liberated. Well, you shouldn't focus it, it just happens. It's the opening of your being that you're experiencing, and feel comfortable as you are. Mm. Oh. So, what's the point of this? Find who you are, know thyself. Mind is not everything, there's constraint, but there's opening to connect to who you really are. But you can use the word like no self, no mind, no thinking, and find your home and the peace and sense of liberation. This is not someone telling, but you are to experience. And whatever the reason, I picked up those ideas of melting into nature, find home, or be liberated, or feel comfortable as you are, or two universes, and all the other videos on YouTube pointing this state of liberation. And what you find is the wisdom of nature right there. It existed and is manifested everywhere. And we are one of them from the dust of the universe to be like this. Even through suffering, and because of suffering, as a necessary step for us to be enlightened or opened up or awakened. And the door is open. And we can connect to that. And there's a peace in the sense of liberation, whatever the way you want to capture. And actually, that's the contradiction. There's no you and there's nothing to capture because it's already there and you don't exist anymore. And when you have that, you might want to remember it or explore it in such a dimension to release all the stress, suffering, worries, constraints, and be free, liberated. And you're breathing freely, not intentionally, but most comfortably in that state of being. Thank you. I said thank you. I don't know who I'm talking to. Thank you. I'm thanking to the state of being coming from you, whoever that you is. You can call you as God, as nature. Doesn't matter. It's just the word. So just be.